They found an albino shrimp the size of a house cat. That is crazy! I recently finished reading this book for the second time, and there are so many lessons and facts I really want to share with you. The reason why I read it for the second time is because the first book I lost. I don't know where it is. And because I like highlighting stuff, I have like a color system that I do with highlighting stuff, which I can get into if you're interested in like learning strategies. But yeah, so I have, okay, first of all, what is this book? It's called Deep, and it's written by James Nestor. He also wrote a book called Breath, I think. I read it, but I could read it again, to be honest, because I sometimes just forget stuff that I learn. I always say I wish I could retain information, like scientific information, apart from shark stuff. I remember almost everything I learned about sharks, but any like scientific or historical fact, I forget. And I always say I wish I could remember those facts in the same way I remember lyrics. So that would be a good talent. But yes, so this book was written in 2014, but then it got republished in 2015 because in the back of the book, like the last couple of pages, there's actually more information he added after he published the paperback. No, sorry, the hardcover. And this is the paperback. So when I read like scientific books or like books I want to keep information and go back and reread it, or like, yeah, just remember some interesting facts, I always have this color code system where I just highlight stuff that reminds me of that fact. So anything in this book about animals, underwater animals, like marine animals, is highlighted in blue. Anything about people that appear in this book, it's purple. Any freediving kind of fact is pink. Any like general information is yellow. And then I actually didn't use orange and green. So you see there's like a system behind the way I use the colors. It's not just I go from yellow to green. It's what color reminds me of that specific fact. Yeah, so, but first of all, what is this book? So basically this book came about because James Nestor went to a freediving competition and wrote an article for a paper, for a magazine. And then he learned more about freediving, and so he wrote a whole book about it. But this book isn't just for people who are interested in freediving. There are so many people and facts about marine animals, different scientists, different people working in specific fields to learn more about the ocean. And it's just a fantastic book, honestly. As I said, I've read it twice now, but I could read it. I could start reading it tomorrow again because it's so good. Okay, so I just wanted to show you some very, very cool facts. The way I'm going to do this is I don't like cutting and editing the video that much. I just want it to be like a conversation where I talk to you about this book. So I'm just going to go page by page, basically, and tell you all the things that I highlighted. I mean, not all the things. There are too many facts. But okay, so the first fact is there are different zones, right? And he also has this kind of overview of the zones of the ocean. So shallow waters are called photic, so sunlight zone. And these are bays, rivers, but it can also be like clear tropical waters. And only 2% of the entire ocean is made of this photic zone, but it houses around 90% of its known life, which is so cool. Sea algae, which makes up to 98% of the biomass in the ocean and can grow nowhere else but in the photic zone, because they need sunlight, right? And 70% of the oxygen on Earth comes from ocean algae. Did you know that? Coral is the largest biological structure on the planet and covers some 175,000 square miles of the seafloor. So, because this book is written in like feet, miles, pounds, whatever, and not the metric system, I usually, because I wanted to know what depth he was talking about, I just, can you see that? I just wrote down what the depth is. So when he says 800 feet down, it's around 243 meters. Yeah. So then, let's keep going. So what I really liked about this book is that there are different topics, but they all come together so well, and the way he discovers his own freediving journey while writing this book was really interesting. And so he meets up with people from like the whale science community, shark science community, free divers. It's so cool to see so many names I know from also shark photography and shark science in this book, and he just met these people. That's really, really cool. Okay, let's see. And I mean, to be honest, like I didn't fact check these facts because they're in this book, so he already fact checked them. I'm just sharing what's in this book. But for example, small-toothed sand tiger sharks, a rare species, showed that they were diving a staggering 6,000 feet down and migrating hundreds of miles and back again. So, yeah, I didn't translate how many 6,000 feet down is, but that's very deep. Because isn't like 300 feet, like 30 feet is 10 meters. So yeah, a lot of meters. Then, okay, here's a comment I made, which says cool. So let's read this paragraph. Humans also have magnetic deposits. He talked about the ampullae of Lorenzini that the sharks have at the snout, which are jelly-filled pores, which help them to detect electromagnetic fields. And so he says, humans also have magnetic deposits. They're found in the skulls, which separates the nasal cavity from the brain. The location of these deposits in a human head corresponds closely to their position in sharks and other migratory animals, a relic from the magnet-sensitive fish from which humans and sharks both evolved 500 million years ago. So yes, I would agree with past me, that's very cool. Ooh, that was a really, really interesting kind of chapter when he talked about ama, which are an ancient culture of Japanese diving women. For more than 2,500 years, ama used the same freediving techniques passed down from mother to daughter to gather food from the ocean floor. Although they could dive up to 150 feet down and stay under for minutes at a time, the ama never competed. They never competed, that's what it said. Freediving for them was a tool, a means of survival, and it means sea woman. And then he went to meet with these women, and that was just a very, very inspiring chapter. And then there was a chapter about dolphins. And I mean, I know a lot about sharks, and I like all animals. Yes, also spiders, but I don't like seeing them. But dolphins, I don't really know much about them. but I know that they're very intelligent. And so this chapter was quite interesting because it says dolphins can detect the shape, position, and size of larger objects from up to 6 miles away. I didn't calculate how much 6 miles is, but it sounds quite far. Their echolocation is so powerful and sensitive that it can penetrate over a foot deep into sand. It can even see beneath skin. So dolphins can peer into the lungs, stomachs, and brains of the other animal around them. How crazy. So they can scan you what you just ate. Oh, that's also very interesting. To adapt to this dim-lit environment, some animals evolved to have super sensitive eyes. Others create their own light with bioluminescence. Rays and sharks use electro and magnetic reception. Cetaceans evolved to have remarkable powers of echolocation. Yeah, I know that. I already knew that. Ooh, and then there's also the fact that dolphins use specific, extremely detailed signature whistles to identify themselves in larger groups. So they have kind of this communication that this one scientist tried to kind of translate and then use those clicks to introduce himself when he sees the dolphins. Okay, and then it talks about the intelligence of dolphins. For instance, the dolphin neocortex, the part of the brain that performs higher order thinking functions, like problem solving, is proportionally larger than the human neocortex. So in that sense, dolphins are better at problem solving. And interesting, dolphins don't have vocal cords. So they can't vocalize in a way that sounds like a human speech. Instead, they use two small mouth-like structures embedded in their heads. Okay, cool. I don't even know if this video is interesting, but maybe it's more for like future me so that I don't have to read the book again. I can just watch this video and remind myself of all these cool facts. Oh, and then he meets all these people who are very good at freediving. It's very impressive. And then, yeah, I really like this kind of illustration. And then he also has some photos in there that other people took, some that I already know. I have a whole like photography book by one of these photographers, Jean-Marie Guillain. Yeah, really cool photography book, sharks. And then he talks about different zones. One of them is the bathypelagic zone, and it's permanent blackness there. And it extends from 3,300 down to 13,000 feet. So 3,000 feet is around 3,000 feet is around 1,000 meters. So yeah, very, very deep. No sunlight has ever touched these deep waters. The pressure is debilitating, ranging from 100 to 400 times that on the surface. Crazy. And then he talks about different submersibles, which went down to that depth. And the bathypelagic or midnight zone can take up to 4 hours to go down there. And then he actually went down to the Cayman Trench, which is around the Cayman Islands, and it goes down to 25,000 feet. And it's the world's deepest volcanic ridge. It's a hostile environment, and it has bizarre animals and microorganisms. And then he talks about why it's so dark down there. And that's something I know from underwater photography as well, when you lose the colors, the deeper you go. So he says longer wavelength colors like red, orange are easiest for the water molecules to absorb, and so they drop out first. So the red color disappears at 50 feet down, Because the color goes missing kind of the deeper you go, blue fish are exceedingly rare in the ocean and red fish are fairly common. And then there's the mesopelagic, which is 800 feet down. 99% of the sunlight has been absorbed by water. And then he goes, in a submersible, he goes down to that bathypelagic zone. And that was just such an interesting and fascinating chapter to read, because I don't know if I would want to go down that deep in such a small submarine or submersible, because he explains it so well that first it's very hot in there because it's very small and only 3 people are in there. And then they go deeper, deeper, deeper. It gets darker and also colder. So yeah, it's a bit scary, I think. Not just a bit, it's very scary. But then he sees bioluminescence, which is so cool. Ooh, and then he talks about the giant squids. So they can grow up to 60 feet long. Again, 30 feet are 10 meters. I hope I'm correct with that. So what? They can grow up to 20 meters? You see, I got lazy towards the end of the book. I didn't calculate what feet is in meters all the time. Only did it in the beginning. But yeah, so they use bright flashes to communicate, and they have huge eyes that evolved not to process sunlight because they will never see the sun, but to pick up the faintest bioluminescent flickers. Only 2 giant squids have ever been filmed, which is crazy. And then he also talks about different fish that swim vertically. Interesting. Once they touch down at 2,200 feet, they encounter a powdery blanket of leftover calcium and silicon from billions of microscopic skeletons. So it's the Earth's oldest graveyard. And then they see reddish eel-like fish about 2 feet long. And then they see a grey shark with a long, ragged dorsal fin drift sloppily by. And it swims in a lazy half circle, then stares blankly at us through the window with crossed eyes. How adorable. Because food is extremely scarce at that depth, they are carnivores, so no plants because there's no plants down there, and they have developed a gelatinous skin and skeletal frames that are the most efficient design for this deep water environment. He talks about different animals there. And then perhaps the most impressive deep water adapter is the electric ray that can emit a shock of more than 220 volts, about twice that of a light socket in an American household. Crazy. Ooh, and then they suddenly see a 2-foot glob of flashing color approaching. It's a comb jellyfish. They propel themselves with an outer layer of fine hairs that can grow up to 5 feet in length. Again, 5 feet, if it's 6 feet, it's 2 meters. So, like all jellyfish, the comb jellyfish has no eyes, no ears, no digestive system, no muscles. They are made of 98% of water and have a network of invisible nerves and collagen. And they have no brain. Cool. And then, okay, that's also something important, apparently, according to my notes. The bathypelagic and the sunless depths below house 85% of the ocean's life, the largest living space on the planet. Yes, I think that's very important to highlight that. There are an estimated 30 million undiscovered species in the ocean, but only 1.4 million known species on land. What? That's crazy. Yeah, crazy. Okay, and then he goes more into freediving and all the things he learns from his mentors. And then he goes on a sperm whale expedition. Okay, that was also very interesting because, again, I don't know much about whales. So, the sperm whale has 4 stomachs and a single nostril on top of his head. And they have a 300-gallon reservoir of oil that gives its enormous nose. They can hold their breath for up to 90 minutes and can go down to 1,000 feet. And that I knew, and it's quite cute. Calves are raised not just by their mothers, but by an entire matriarchal group. So, which includes aunts and grandmothers. It's very cute. And sperm whales are the loudest animals on Earth. Ooh, and a whale's brain is the largest brain that's ever existed on Earth. Crazy. I mean, they are also quite big, but then they also have a big brain. Okay, the neocortex, the part of the brain that in humans governs higher level functions such as conscious thought, future planning, and language, is estimated to be about 6 times larger in the sperm whale brain than it is in ours. Ooh, that's very interesting about the whales. Sperm whales produce 4 distinct vocalization patterns. Normal clicks for tracking down prey at distances. Creaks, which sound, despite their name, like machine gun fire for homing in on close-range prey. Codas, the patterns used during social interactions, and slow clicks, which no one quite understands. Interesting. And then he goes on this whale expedition, and then he has this incredible interaction with these whales while freediving. So basically, the whole book is about freediving and different animals, but it ties together with his freediving journey. He learns how to freedive and then has these incredible encounters. And then he talks about the Hadal Zone, which is very, very, very deep. Let's check on this graphic, maybe on this illustration. Where is it? Oh yeah, it's it's down there. That's the Hadal Zone. So at 28,700 feet. So and it's covered with ooze. So this ooze of microscopic skeletons blankets more than half of the ocean floor. And billions of years ago, when the ocean covered the planet, ooze coated what is now land. So for example, the pyramids are made of limestone, which is the sedimentary rock made up of ooze. London's Houses of Parliament and the Empire State Building are also built using limestone. So basically, limestone is tiny, tiny, tiny skeletons from billions of years ago. Okay, and then he talks more about the Hadal Zone. The Hadal Zone trenches are just like the world's highest mountains, but they're kind of, because they're trenches, they're going down. So, oh yeah, there's the comparison. Imagine flipping Everest, K2, Mont Blanc, all these mountains, flipping them upside down and looking at each of the tallest mountains from underneath. That's what it feels like being in those trenches. Ooh, oh my God, that was such a cool fact. In the Kermadec Trench, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the world's second deepest trench located off the coast of New Zealand. They found an albino shrimp the size of a house cat. That is crazy. An estimated of 56% of these animals are endemic to Hadal water, meaning they probably live nowhere else in the ocean. Further, only 3% of those endemic Hadal animals were found in other Hadal zones. And then he's on this research vessel with other researchers, and they deploy like underwater cameras and different tools to get some samples from the Hadal Zone. The RAVs that they deploy record that there was life down there, tons of it, flourishing around a column of seawater hot enough to melt lead. 750 degrees, probably Fahrenheit, but still very, very hot. The water didn't turn to steam like it would at the surface because of the tremendous pressure at these depths. And until 1977, it was thought that all life required sunlight. But then they realized that a new biological system fueled by chemicals, scientists called it chemosynthetic life. So some life didn't need sunlight, which was in those Hadal zones or something. And then the revelation about chemosynthetic life led to another mind-boggling discovery. It turned out that the hydrothermal vents were only temporary homes. So vents die off and new vents suddenly erupt. And then he said that the question was, where does this life and these largest animals come from? Nobody knows for sure, but there's increasing evidence suggesting it came from inside the vents. Life on Earth may have started not on the sunlit surface, but down in the boiling toxic waters of the world's deep oceans. In the 1980s, when Günther Wächtershäuser, a German academic, put forth the idea in an academic journal that life had originated in the deep ocean. His theory was that that all life on Earth started from chemical reactions between two minerals, iron and sulfur. So he called it iron-sulfur world theory. And so yeah, then he talks more about this theory, blah, blah, blah. It's so interesting. I'm not going to talk you through everything. Ooh, and then another fact about sperm whales. Sperm whales have about 40 teeth along its lower jaw. But they don't chew their food. They use their teeth as little antennas to assist in echolocation. And they stun and kill their prey with a super powerful gunshot click. And then they can consume the prey like whole. They don't have to chew them. And then he also speaks to Fred Boyle. He's a shark photographer and freediver and shark advocate, and they also go freediving together. But this one quote I really liked that Fred Boyle said about like all the shark incidents that happened in La Réunion. He said, "People need to learn that when they are in the ocean, they are swimming in nature. The only solution here is education. Don't swim in cloudy water, don't swim after a big rain, don't swim near a river, but nobody listens." And yeah, that's how I feel as well, but more on that maybe in a different video. But then there is this whole chapter with notes, and I really like that one because he has like notes from different pages. So from page 18, where he said coral has no eyes, no ears, and no brain. And then he kind of explains that sentence with more information. That sentence was about how corals coordinate their spawning, which is so incredibly interesting. Because, yeah, as he says, they have no eyes, no ears, no brain. How do they communicate? In 2007, researchers discovered that coral had a gene called CRY2 that allowed it to distinguish between subtle changes in light. In humans, CRY2 proteins help set circadian rhythms of sleep and may also be related to depression and mood disorders. Corals were using the gene as their tiniest and most primitive eyes. They could sense blue light and actually work out what phase the moon is in. So yeah, there was this whole thing were also some aquariums that didn't have any access to sunlight or moonlight, where the corals started spawning. So it's still a very, very interesting kind of phenomenon, the coral spawning. Yeah, I think those were the main facts from this book I wanted to share. There were so many more. Like, if you look at the pages, there are so many different things I highlighted. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to share about this book. I have some other books I could share with you if you're interested, but also please, if you've read this book, let me know what facts that surprised you or what you found interesting. And if you have any recommendations for different freediving, marine animal, ocean related books, let me know in the comments. I would love to read them or listen to them as an audiobook. But yeah, I highly, highly recommend this book. It's really great. Yeah, I think that's it for this video. Check out my other videos where I talk about my shark documentary I'm making at the moment. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers!